The wind howled like an angry beast across the Colorado mountains at night. Everything changed for David Miller, a former Army veteran, who had traded the noise of the world for the silence of high-altitude snow and pine. He fought in places where the ground shook and the sky burned, and when he finally walked away from war, he wanted only one thing: a place where nobody asked questions and nobody expected anything from him but that same silence. Began to crack the night. His dog, Ranger, a loyal black Labrador, began barking wildly at the frozen earth behind the cabin because what Ranger found buried beneath the snow would expose secrets David never imagined and force the entire mocking town below to confront how wrong they had been about him. But before that truth came out, the mountain air burned his lungs, and he stood alone, staring at the place Ranger clawed open, knowing something was about to shift in a way he could not yet understand. And if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unseen battles people carry, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, because your support keeps these powerful stories alive in the world. For 2 years, the people in the valley town of Silver Ridge had mocked David's mountain house, calling his shack a hermit hole, a broken-down veteran bunker, a place no decent man would live. They whispered about how he had lost himself after the Army, how he was damaged, unstable, too quiet, too alone. They even joked about Ranger, saying the dog was the only thing smart enough to tolerate it, but none of them knew the real story of why David had chosen this mountain. They never knew the grief that hollowed him out the day he lost his younger brother Lucas, who had followed him into the Army and never returned home, or how the silence of the mountain was the only thing that kept David from drowning in memories that crawled back whenever the world grew too loud. The cabin itself was small, made from dark pine logs his own hands had sanded down and stacked together, the windows old and foggy from winter after winter, but the view was a sweeping ocean of pine, sharp rock, and sky every dawn, painting gold across the ridges, and every night folding the world into blue shadows. And even though the townspeople mocked him, even though they avoided him in the grocery store, David told himself it didn't matter, because silence was better than judgment, and Ranger was better company than any human could offer. But everything changed on the morning Ranger began acting strange. The night before had been brutal, with heavy snow falling thick and fast. But the morning sky opened clear and bright, and smoke drifted gently from David's chimney as he made coffee. But Ranger paced back and forth, whining, as if sensing something urgent. And when David finally followed the dog outside, the world was a frozen white shell, and Ranger bolted toward the back edge of property, dragging David across drifts until he began digging wildly at a patch of untouched snow. At first, David thought maybe it was a trapped animal, but when Ranger unearthed an old metal hinge, David froze. The shape was unmistakable, the outline of a heavy iron door buried under years of dirt, snow, and tangled roots, a door leading somewhere beneath his mountain cabin. And David felt a shiver run through him, because he had never seen it before, but someone had placed it there long before he came. As they cleared more snow, the rusted door revealed a small ring handle, cold as ice. When David pulled it open, and a long breath of stale air rose from the darkness below, like the mountain itself exhaled, something ancient inside the steps were stone, rough and narrow, leading into the earth, and Ranger went down without hesitation. So David grabbed a flashlight, swallowed the heavy tension in his chest, and followed the dog into the cold silence that waited beneath the ground as the beam of light swept the walls. David realized he was walking through a tunnel not natural, but carved by human hands decades ago, and the deeper they went, the more the air smelled of old dust, metal, and something faintly chemical. When they finally reached the end of the tunnel, opened into a wide chamber, and David went still, because the light revealed rows of metal cabinets, wooden crates sealed with military locks, and a wall covered in maps, weather documents, and equipment that looked too advanced to be abandoned in a mountain. The sight hit him hard, not because of what was there, but because of what he suddenly recognized. Of the markings were military, and more than that, one of the crates bore his grandfather's name, Sergeant William T. Miller, a man David never knew, but whose stories lived only in family photographs and faded medals tucked away in drawers. He felt as if the air had been punched from his lungs, because there was no mistake this hidden chamber had belonged to his grandfather, and it was clear from supplies that the old soldier had created some kind of emergency shelter, a place for survival preparation and intelligence gathering during a time when war had touched every corner of American life. But the maps showed something else: marked routes, caves, water channels, diagrams of the entire mountain, and symbols that looked like coded messages. David realized his grandfather had built something far bigger than a shelter. He had created a secure hidden bunker and never told anyone. And as David scanned the dusty journals scattered on a table, he found one entry dated long before he was born, describing a dangerous event in the valley and how enemies of the country had once attempted to infiltrate the region. The journal ended with a chilling line promising that the mountain would always protect the Miller family if danger ever returned. David felt a slow, cold wave pass through him as he understood that the mocking townspeople had no clue that the quiet veteran on the mountain lived above a piece of forgotten American history, and that his presence there was no accident but part of a legacy he never knew he had inherited. Ranger nudged a wooden box in the corner, and when David opened it, he found sealed documents, coded keys, and communication devices, old but powerful, and the weight of those discoveries rolled through him like thunder, and for the first time in years, he felt something rise inside him, not sorrow, not silence, but purpose. But news travels fast in small towns, and within days, people began noticing the trucks coming up the mountain, government vehicles, restoration teams, even historians. And once they realized the hidden bunker was real, the same people who mocked David began driving up the mountain trying to take pictures and ask questions, pretending they had always believed in him, pretending they had always respected him. But David felt no anger, only a quiet ache, because people judge easily when they know nothing, and they respect only what they think is valuable. And yet, even then, David stayed silent until one afternoon a group of townspeople followed him up the trail to the bunker door, demanding to understand what they were seeing and why it had been hidden. And David finally told them the truth, not with bitterness, but with the calm, steady voice of a man who had carried too much for too long. He told them about his grandfather, about the warnings in the journals, about the preparations made to protect the valley long ago. And when he finished, Ranger scratched at one of the deeper walls behind a row of crates, and the people watched as David examined the spot and discovered another hidden compartment containing Meadows' documents and a recorded message from his grandfather describing his faith in future generations of soldiers, including those not yet born. And in that moment, the truth washed over everyone on that mountain. The veteran they mocked had been living atop a legacy built to protect all of them, and the dog they laughed at had revealed the heart of it all. As word spread through the nation, people began calling David a hero, even though he said he had simply followed Ranger and the quiet pull of family, and the once lonely cabin became a symbol of hidden strength and unseen sacrifice. And near the end of this journey, if this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, because your support helps more stories of courage reach others who may need hope. And before the ending, I would love for you to comment below what part of David's story moved you the most. In time, Silver Ridge changed. The same people who mocked him now approach with respect, offering apologies, bringing supplies, offering help to preserve the bunker. And for the first time since Lucas died, David felt the mountain silence soften, no longer heavy, but peaceful, a place where past and future stood together, and Ranger rested beside him, tail slow and warm in the cold wind, while David looked out over the valley, knowing he had finally found not just silence, but meaning and belonging. And even though the world would keep on mocking others like him, he would always remember that sometimes a mountain house, a loyal dog, and a hidden truth were all it took to show the world what a quiet man was truly made of.